Hey guys, welcome back to the channel and welcome back to Rock and Roll Religion. My name is Pope Metallicus, and we've got a bit different one for you today. It's been a while since we went down the path of darkness and evil here on this channel, so we're getting back into that with the second wave of black metal. We've covered most of the first wave bands, or at least the really influential ones, and I wanted to get back to covering the more recent ones that have been a more direct influence on the genre into the modern era, and some of which are still around. And the my favorite of these guys is a band from the wilds of Norway by the name of Emperor, and they're a fantastic band, really, really influential going forward, and a good exemplar of how the sound evolved from the first to the second wave, being basically a direct descendant of Bathory. And here to help me do that is our expert on all things evil and or heretical, Mr. Imperitus. How's it going, my dude?
It's going well. It's going well. Got to be, up when you're a Grand High Inquisitor, you got to be up on all things evil and heretical.
Well, I know you know these things. It's a burden, but you do it well.
I don't know how much of a burden it really is, but you are correct on the second part. I do it well.
It's like, yes, I'm studying it for purely academic reasons. Please ignore that goat in the closet. It's there for ceremonial purposes. But yeah, no, these guys are just super influential, and
for
even
sure.
the look of a black metal album, these guys kind of not pioneered, but really exemplify well. But it's done well and not in a cringy way.
You are correct.
Because I've seen a ton of black metal album covers where it's just like, oh, you guys are trying way, way too hard.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. There is definitely a style that they kind of pioneered. As far as like album art and everything like that, it wasn't just some simple photo taken at night with the flash on, like half of Dark Throne's albums were in the beginning.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, not mentioning any bands in particular, Dark Throne.
Things like
half of their discography.
Yeah, doing like things like that or whatever. They used full art for their covers.
Yeah, and that's always been cool to me, is you can get somebody to draw this. Like, look at the line detail in this shit. Like, this took a minute.
Yeah, this took a while to get done for sure, especially with all the shading.
Yeah, like, even though there's not much color and not a lot of contrast in some parts of it, just the line work is going to take forever.
Yeah.
And Greg, we are going to be doing Appetite for Destruction in the near future. That's in the list. I think we have one more show in front of that, and then we're coming up with that because one of my favorite NWO THM bands just released a new album. So we're going to be talking about that. But, getting into the first record here, like, we're talking, these guys formed in what, 91?
Something like that. Between 89 and 91, something along those lines.
And then didn't release this until 1994.
Right.
Although in the middle, they were up to some extracurricular activities that would come to bite half of their members in the ass, including a jail sentence for two of them.
For two different reasons, no less.
Yeah, two different reasons and three different incidents, I believe.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Because one of them got arrested for not only murdering a guy, but burning down a church with Euronymous from Mayhem.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other one got arrested for burning down a church with Varg from Burzum.
Mm-hmm.
Oh god!
And honestly, I don't think Euronymous ever did burn a church.
No, I don't think he did. I think that was what's his name? I think that was Faust.
Faust
actually started the fire.
I don't know if Faust. Again, I'm not sure if Faust was involved in any of the burnings. I do know he is, a convicted murderer.
Mm-hmm.
Samoth went to jail for arson.
Yeah, I don't think they ever convicted him, but I think he was one of those ones that got away with it. And I can't remember the name of the thing. Let's look it up here. Trying to see the name of it. Oh, the Skjold Church. That's right. So that happened shortly after this album came out.
Right.
But yeah, there was a whole string of church burnings in Norway about this time. For those of you who aren't aware, and yeah, the culprits were exactly who you think they are.
Yeah, unfortunately, that was true.
Yeah, a bunch of edgy teenagers with gasoline and too much time on their hands. Wait, shit, where have the local metal bands been? Oh, but like, and this is one of those cases where the metalheads were actually behind it, because there had been a string of church burnings through the last decade or so that got blamed on the metal community that we had nothing to do with.
Correct.
Unfortunately, this time it was real. And but getting into the first record, I mean, musically, these guys came out the gate swinging.
Yes.
Like, because this is their first record in the Nightside Eclipse, and sonically, the band, it just sounds like a fully formed band ready to rock and roll. Like, there's no starts or hiccups to this band. Even the early stuff, for a black metal band, sounds really well put together. Obviously, poorly produced because that's part of the sound. But
honestly, though, for the time frame, this album actually had pretty good production.
Yeah, that's true. It's not a badly produced record. It's just a black metal record, so it's intentionally supposed to be a little more atmospheric, a little more grungy. And all four of them put in a great performance. Ison's vocals really remind me of Korthon from Bathory on this one. And
Quite a
that
bit,
is not a insult by any means. In fact, if anybody was curious as to their musical influences, there's a re-release of this album that actually has Emperor's cover of A Fine Day to Die on it.
Yes.
And I would heavily recommend that version because it's amazing.
That cover is fan-fucking-tastic.
Yeah, I was blown away. Like, there are times where I thought it was Bathory mixed in there. Because note for note, they're damn near perfect.
Yeah. They put some effort into that.
One thing I really like with this album is some of the atmospherics and some of the tone changes, and how through a lot of their stuff, Emperor will play like the harder part of the hard part of the song on doing all tremolo picking, and then do the same notes but single picking and without the distortion in different parts of the song. Like obviously the famous "I Am the Black Wizards." There's a couple songs. A couple sequences in there where the notes are the same, but they're being played differently.
Yeah.
Which creates that kind of warbling effect that you hear in a lot of black metal. It's all tremolo picking. And for those of you who don't,
sweep picking, yeah.
Well, not necessarily sweep picking. It's basically you're picking the same string, but really fast and up and down. So instead, actually I can demonstrate because I figured I'd bring this up. Because this is a hallmark of black metal as a whole, is so instead of, playing a note normally like this, or just, I don't know if you guys can hear that. So just picking it individually, you're basically doing this. Like you're basically picking up and down on the same string really, really rapidly. And that creates that kind of warbling effect. So you're not actually changing the note at all, but you're just playing it up and down, which creates this kind of buzzsaw effect that is so clear on this record and black metal in general. It's one of the reasons I love the genre so much. Because if you can imagine doing that at 240 BPM, that fucking hurts after a minute.
I can't, the guys from Marduk, for example, probably have some massive forearms.
I don't want to know what their freaking workout routine looks like to keep their hand like that. Even just doing that fast, like it's, ugh.
Well, you know what it comes down to too is there's a reason why their songs are short.
Well,
in the case of Marduk,
some of these Emperor songs go into the 7-8 minute mark.
Yeah.
Well, they're still doing it.
But look at the time changes.
True. Yeah, there's a whole lot of signature changes in there.
They do a lot of, okay, we're gonna take a break for a few seconds here. Both the drummer will do that, as well as the guitars and everything. They'll kind of go into a little bit more of a breakdown. And that's not like, oh, that doesn't fit black metal. No, you're right. It probably doesn't, but it makes it so they can take a fucking break.
Yeah, it makes it so their drummer won't die.
So it's
because when you listen in the background, like the percussion is kind of really low in the mix on this record, but holy shit!
And you know who did the drums for this album?
Oh, it's Faust.
No.
It
was Mortiz.
Oh, okay, I was gonna say because the drummer for this album should be Faust because he was.
It should be, but Mortiz did the recording.
Oh, okay, so he was in the band at this point, but he was probably in jail at the time.
No, Mortiz was in the band originally. And
that's right. Yep.
And then left to go do his own thing, and that's when they picked up Faust.
Yeah, and then very quickly lost him again.
Well, yeah, that'll happen.
Yeah, well, it's that kind of scene, isn't it?
It was.
Well, to some degree, it still is, just a little more cringy and a lot less tongue-in-cheek than it used to be.
Well, the other thing, too, is it's weird to say it, but black metal got commercialized.
Yeah, I know what you mean by that, but it is weird to hear black metal and commercial in the same sentence.
Happened to death metal, too.
That I can totally see, because everybody knows what death metal is now, even though half of them are wrong.
Well, a lot of people in the scene at the time took Cannibal Corpse being in the first Ace Ventura movie as like, oh, great. What kind of attention is this going to bring?
Yeah, and anytime you're like any kind of niche group, whether it be a hobby or genre of music or whatever, gets mainstream attention like that, it's just like, oh god, here come the normies.
Yep.
They're all going to try to be cool and join our fucking cult.
And with black metal, a lot of the bands, whether it's, I don't know how true it is, but from what I've heard, a lot of the bands that cropped up about halfway through the second wave were all hanger-ons.
Yeah, I can kind of see that. Less so like Emperor and Mayhem and all those guys. But I can see some of the later ones, like maybe Dark's Funeral or Dimmu Borgir, that kind of came in towards the end of the second wave. Which makes sense, or at least in Dimmu's case, because only their first album is really any good.
First two.
Yeah, I haven't heard the second album. So
Stormblast is pretty good.
Okay.
It's in the same vein as the first one, just a little more polished production-wise.
All right, so I'll have to give that one.
It wasn't until their third album is when they started being, oh, look, they're a black metal band. Because they sound like a black metal band.
Yeah, because it does, like you say, it all kind of blends together after a while, and there's nothing original or different about any of them, and you're just kind of sitting there like, yeah,
pretty much.
It's a good, another black metal band.
Well, their style went from what they did, that slower paced, more depressive sound that they had in the first two albums, into stereotype black metal band.
Yeah, and you can only get away with that for so long. And and people who just get into the scene will dig it because they think it's new and interesting, and then the people who have been there a minute, it's like, oh, we're doing this again, are we?
Yeah, you're not wrong there. But this album, I mean, this was like the first actual second wave. It was this. Oh, what the hell is it? It's a Dark Throne album. Blaze in the Northern Sky.
Thunder?
No, Blaze in the Northern Sky.
Blaze in the Northern Skies. That's the first one. That's right.
That's actually their second album, but their first black metal album.
Yeah.
And then, believe it or not, Detsom Engang Var by Burzum.
Yeah.
Those are the first three albums I heard.
And then I think Mayhem was right in there too.
It was, but as far as what I heard.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And I've never really gotten into Mayhem.
Fair. I mean, when you look at it, there's not a lot to get into. I think they only have like 2 records.
They have more than that now, but from this time period, they only had Day Mysteries, Dom Satanas.
Yeah, and so, there's really not a lot to get into, and now it's not really mayhem.
No, technically it still is because it's got a couple of the guys that were in it originally. I believe.
Well, yeah,
Necro
but
Butcher's
you
still
don't have
there.
Euronymous.
For obvious reasons, 20
Yeah,
stab
well,
wounds to the head and neck will kind of prevent you from doing
although
anything.
I would say if they got Euronymous back, that would make them like the greatest the greatest black metal band of all time.
No. If they got Dead back.
Fair, yeah, too. But like, let's face it, if Euronymous actually came back up to the stage, it's like, oh my god, they actually raised him from the dead.
Mm-hmm.
These guys actually did it. Oh no, what have we done? We've crossed some sort of supernatural boundary we can't uncross.
Yeah, well, of course, something like that would come from black metal, but
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of that scene from Metalocalypse where they accidentally raised this like eldritch horror from the lake.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, of course it would be you guys. That would be one of the Norwegian bands too. Just like, we did a thing and we're not really sure what to do about it.
Yep, we kind of raised a troll. Sorry.
Yeah, it's like, we're not quite sure what to do about this now, but we're really sorry. We're going.
And I love that episode of Metalocalypse. Pickle's like, we wrote the lyrics from your finished book of necromantic spells, and I hear the whole crowd just go, oh.
Oh. Well, Soul Assassin, that would be interesting. That would be a very interesting episode.
I wouldn't say Sentinel. I wouldn't say Metalocalypse normalized the underground scenes, but they definitely paid homage to it because there's a lot of references. If you're a normie, you're not gonna get.
Yeah, there was some interesting shit in there. Like the first time I saw it when I was in high school or whatever, I didn't really understand. And then I watched back through it again recently, and I'm like, oh, okay. These guys actually know what they're talking about.
There's a lot of references to bands, references to lyrics,
references to events that are famous throughout the genre.
Mm-hmm. So if you don't actually like first episode alone, they reference 4 different Cannibal Corpse songs.
Mm-hmm.
And only one of them is actually known, and that's Hammer Smashed Face.
Yeah, and well, a lot of them do. A lot of the stuff they reference is a super deep cut.
Mm-hmm. Burzum's as a restaurant, or Dimmu Burger, Marduk Sporting Goods, the Necrophagist Home for Wayward Kitties.
Yeah, that one got a chuckle out of me.
That one scene where where it's like the hurricane episode where the guy's driving across the beach. He's like, I'm the lunatic of God's creation. That's a deicide lyric.
Yeah, I'd say anyone who's listened to half of this stuff is just like, nah, he did the thing.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot more of that watching through the next time, and I'll probably get even more the third walking through it a third time.
Yeah, that's what's great about that show. It's like you'll catch stuff like, hey, wait a minute.
Yeah, it's like I didn't see that. That's true. Yep.
There's a lot of guys from bands that also did voices. George Corpse Grinder Fisher did one.
Yep.
Like
you said, Richard Christie from Iced Earth.
Kirk Hammett actually did something surprisingly.
That's right, yeah. Which he seems like the guy, like the one in that band that actually has a sense of humor about things.
I would say James does too, especially now that he's kind of rehabbed himself.
True.
The only real pretentious one has always been Lars.
True, although James has gotten butthurt about stuff on a little bit of occasion.
Yeah, but the question is, was that really him or was that the booze talking?
That's also true. Because Dave used to get like that too.
Mm-hmm. I mean, because if you see James's episode where he was on the Rogan show, he came across as just very chill, very cool, kind of realizing like, oh, hey, I'm kind of well into middle age now.
Yeah, I can leave the and I've kind of created a band that will be spoken of until the end of time. I can kind of stop getting an ego about things now.
Mm-hmm. You turned your thrash metal band into one of the biggest bands on the planet. You did something pretty impressive.
Yeah, and then managed to fuck it up at Mach speed, but whatever.
Yeah.
It still happened. We can still listen to the good stuff
Mm-hmm.
while relentlessly mocking the new.
Correct.
Like, they have a new song out, and I don't know if you've heard it, but it's not great.
No, I haven't cared for anything they've put out since And Justice for All, so I don't really pay attention.
Well, I mean, I hadn't really either, but this last one, Hardwired to Self-Destruct, actually had some pretty good material on it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they actually remembered that they were a thrash metal band at one point.
Well, I think that's the influence from the new bassist they've got.
Yeah, Robert Trujillo is actually really solid.
He's a solid bassist, but it's also, I think it's a matter of he came from suicidal tendencies.
Yeah, so he's like, hey guys, can we just like play thrash metal again like we used to in the old days?
Which is funny because suicidal tendencies lean back more into their punk origins than their crossover stuff they were doing.
Yeah, true, but I think Trujillo was always more of a fan of the thrash side of that house.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can hear it in a lot of the stuff that he's written and a lot of the stuff he's done with other people. Is like you can tell he's really into that, like more East Coast, like that's like more like the Anthrax style of thrash,
mm-hmm.
where it's a lot punkier than the San Francisco bands.
Yeah,
which I can see the good side to both of them, being a fan of both punk and thrash, because like if it fits, it fits, and there's some other ones that have done really well with it. Like Sodom has had Alskibonth and a couple other ones that are kind of a straight up mixing of punk and thrash. And it's kind of like, ooh.
Well, I think that goes with any form of metal. If it fits, it fits.
Yeah, it's like it doesn't need to make sense. If it fits, it works.
Yeah, I mean, do we really need to quote BattleTech on this? If it fits, it works. If it works, use it.
Yeah, pretty much. And thus the catapult was made.
Yeah, well,
or half of the completely autistic builds that we've made.
Yeah, like, I've shown you a couple of mine, and you were just like, no.
Why?
How are you not overheating? Well.
That's how do you keep it from overheating? That's the fun part. I don't.
No. Even the one build, I forgot what mech it was, but it was 2 binary lasers, 2 large lasers, and like an LRM-20, and it still didn't overheat because it was an assault mech.
Well,
it was on an assault, so I had the tonnage. Yeah, kind of like my Black Knight build. 8 medium lasers and a shitload of heat sinks.
Yep. I still think my favorite one of all time was an HBS BattleTech build. I don't know how. Well, actually, I do know how it let me do it because it has 8 energy hardpoints.
Yeah,
I had 8 PPCs in it.
Oh.
And the funniest part is it worked. I could fire all 8 of them, and then it would shut down immediately.
Yeah. Well, let's not forget Gausszilla is still a thing.
That thing is horrifying, and it needs to not be a thing.
Because it's more than just the 4 Gauss rifles, which is absolutely terrifying.
Yeah, exactly. It has 4 medium lasers behind it?
They might even be larges.
Oh, God.
Yeah, it's pretty disgusting. And I think there's also some missiles in there somewhere, too.
Yeah, that's one of those, like, no, make it stop.
Yeah, but like, this album's got, I don't think there's a bad track on here.
No, there's really not. Spinning the whole thing, like, and they flow together really well.
Yeah, and what's funny too is the last track, Inoma Satana, it kind of changes up the style into what they were leaning into with their second album.
Yeah, it does.
As far as style and production quality and everything like that, like the keyboards
actually became it is a little more polished than the rest and does kind of lean more into what they would do later.
Yeah, like the keyboards are more pronounced on it. Everything's just mixed. It just sounds like it's mixed differently.
Which, once again, for the people who say keyboards are not a metal instrument,
Get fucked, because I even consider an accordion to be a metal instrument.
yeah, exactly. It's all in how you use it.
Go listen to Finster Forest or fucking Corpiclani and get back to me.
Or Ailstorm.
No, Finster Forest, a German band. They put pretty much like the lead is the accordion, not the guitars.
Oh, okay.
And it's the guy must have traps the size of a fucking house, because there's some insanity going on.
Yeah. And yeah, Asatana is right up there for me.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of really good shit on this album.
And the other thing that these guys have always done is they've always had like that evil overtone, but never leaned into that blatant Satanism that a lot of other black metal bands were doing at the time, like Dark Funeral or
none of it's really outright satanic. It's just really ominous and menacing.
I think like the only track on this album that directly references Satan is Asatana.
Well, yeah. Other than that, I was gonna say like they're black metal musically 100%, but like when you listen to the lyrics, they're not overly satanic. They're just really dark.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of like when Samoth started a production company, the label too, called Nocturnal Arts Productions, I believe it was called.
Yep.
And as far as I know, he only released a couple of things. One was this band called Odium. Which they're pretty good, and that's where the label that Limbonic Art started from. And Limbonic Art was the same way, without directly referencing Satan, but the lyrics were pretty goddamn fucking evil.
Well, yeah,
but it's more of like a cosmic horror kind of evil.
Yeah, this isn't like a sell your soul to the devil kind of band. This is we're going to describe the eldritch horror thing that's sitting in the corner and staring at you.
Yeah, pretty much. Or as I like to refer to Limbonic Art, is their madness metal.
Yeah.
Because like I said, it's all evil, it's all dark, but it's not, like I said, it's not directly referencing Satan or anything of the such.
Or not directly worshiping anything. It's really just describing just pure insanity and madness.
Mm-hmm.
Which is part of, I think, Emperor's sound too, in that underneath the menace and that ominous tone, there's this tinge of, like, especially in the slower, more acoustic sections, of just sadness about the whole thing.
Yeah.
Without ever losing that terror, or not terror, but like that ominous feeling that it's like something's coming, which I really dig. And it's even more pronounced on the second album, I think, where you do get a little more acoustic sections. Fuck me if I can remember any of the names, because Jesus Christ, my problem with black metal as a genre. Your song titles I will never remember.
Yeah, I get into the same boat, especially when this is more than a couple words.
Yeah, and this is like half a sentence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's just like, yeah, one of those. It's on this record. I know that.
Yeah. And one thing about this band, too, is you found out today, they make for good snowstorm music.
Yes, because it's been snowing down here all morning, and I was listening to both these records as reviewing the album, and yeah, it just fits. I don't know what it is about it that fits, but it fits.
When you have a genre sound coming from an area that's, winter 60% of the year, 65% of the year, you have the extra long days and nights, especially the further up in the country you go. And Emperor was from Telemark, and if I know my geography correctly, they're pretty up there in Norway. I could be wrong on that, though.
No, not Bing. Go away, Bing. No one uses you. But yeah, that's true, that even the southern parts of Norway, it's winter most of the year.
Mm-hmm.
or at the very least cold most of the year.
Oh, I'm wrong. Telemark is in southern Norway.
Yeah. Okay. So only slightly north of Denmark.
Yeah.
Because that makes it so much better.
But the countryside there is just fucking beautiful.
Yeah, beautiful, but also desolate. Where it's
Yeah.
just nothing there. Because, I mean, pretty much, I remember my Norwegian geography, pretty much all of the civilization in that country is on the
Right.
coast. Like the
It's
interior is just nothing but wasteland and forest.
it's kind of funny. Looking on Wikipedia, there's a section under Telemark from notable people from Telemark. Bunch of people, born, dead, long dead, and currently alive. The very last name on that list is Isan.
Yeah, why am I not surprised? Because they're famous from Telemark, but I wouldn't call anybody in this era of black metal like.
Let's go with infamous.
Yeah, notorious, maybe. Infamous, reviled.
Yeah, they were definitely that in their home country for a while.
Mm-hmm.
But this album dropped at kind of I wouldn't say out of nowhere. It was definitely really hyped up because it was the first new Emperor record in 3, 4, 5 years, whatever it was.
I think it was 3 years because Into the Night Side of Close came out in 94, and then this was, I think, 97.
97, 98, something like that, yeah. But it was really anticipated. We got the first music video out of Emperor, first and only, I think.
I don't know if they've done another one since. I know the one you're talking about, though.
Yeah, for the Loss and Curse of Reverence, which is an incredible fucking song.
And kind of a crazy video, too. It's an experience, man.
And they also picked up a god tier drummer for this album and going forward in Trim, who was originally from Enslaved.
Yes.
And that guy, it was fucking crazy good.
The dude's a machine.
Mm-hmm.
Especially some of the freaking velocities he can hit on that double bass. It's just like,
and the timing changes. And the timing changes. Like the reference, the song I just referenced, Lost in Curse of Reverence. There's a part where it goes from just insane blast beat and it just changes. Space of a single note right back to another fucking tempo.
Yeah.
And it's just like, dear God, how did you not dislocate your shoulders on that?
Well, yeah, or it's just like, or how did you not fuck that up in the time change of just, especially because when you're doing that kind of beat, you have like a millisecond to remember what you're doing and not do it and change out to the point where like you have to know in your head ahead of time, like, okay, next one I'm going to change it up. But no, it's like you said, Trim is an absolute beast.
Yeah, and that also changed up their sound quite a bit. I mean, the sound changed from the first album to this one to some degrees, but I wouldn't say it changed, but it got more refined.
Yeah, that's what I noticed too. Like, it didn't the production quality too didn't necessarily get any clearer.
No, I would say
the percussion got a little sharper.
I would say they actually got a pretty decent production budget for this album.
Well, they did, but I maybe that was the difference. But I just noticed the percussion getting a lot louder and a lot sharper.
Well, they got a better drummer.
True.
You're going to want to kind of show off your new toy, so to speak.
Yeah, that's typically how it works. It's like, hey guys, we got a drummer who can do this now.
Yeah. Not to knock the drumming from the first album because it was quite good,
quite solid. Yeah,
but Trim decimates pretty much anybody on a kit from this time period. No questions asked, no nothing. It's just like, hey, this is this is what a top tier black metal drummer should sound like.
Yeah, I mean, and that's kind of the first two Emperor albums as a whole is, hey, like this is what the second wave of black metal is at its best.
Yeah, at some of its best, because you do have other bands that have a complete different sound style. Again, Marduk, for example, sound nothing
Yeah.
like Emperor, and they are just, again, just as impressive, if not more so in some ways.
Yeah, like I say Emperor's my favorite black or second wave band. To an extent they are, but I forgot Marduk is the same age.
I think Marduk's actually a little older.
Yeah, so that
I think
may have to
Marduk
amend that.
started in like 88.
Yeah, so I may have to amend that to these guys are my second favorite second wave band. Because Marduk, we'll have to do a talk on them soon. Because Jesus Christ, what a band!
Yeah, they are definitely something.
And
Marduk was 1990.
Okay, so one of the only band, I mean, Marduk's one of the only bands that has had like more than 4 albums that have been good.
Yeah.
Because I mean, black metal is one of those genres you can't play forever.
Yeah, well, it's weird because it's like that with a lot of things too. Same with like death metal. Like, look how long Cannibal Corpse has been around.
Yeah, they're kind of this weird monolith in a genre where bands come and go with the wind.
I mean, their first album was 1989.
Yeah, and they've outlived most of their
Contemporaries.
Like Death isn't around anymore, really.
Death isn't around. Bolt Thrower's not around.
Bolt Thrower I thought was still around, just not touring.
Nah, they haven't put anything out in years.
Okay. And then
one of the members died.
Oh, that's true, yeah.
Carcass took a super long hiatus. Obituary took a long hiatus.
Napalm Death is still around.
Yeah, but who cares about a bunch of commies?
That's very true. But they are contemporaries of them, so
Oh yeah,
yeah.
But for certain bands to stay, keep releasing albums in a genre like this, it's kind of impressive.
No, it really is.
And I'm not going to say Marduk's albums have evolved over time. They really haven't. They've just continually polished their sound.
Yeah, and there's something to be said for that, where they have their sound, they have the way they want it to sound, and they keep doing it. And I'll shut up and keep buying it because I like that sound.
Marduk is one of my favorite bands.
Yeah, like they're solid musically, and one of the things that I think Marduk and Emperor have done successfully that a lot of other bands haven't is they've kept their lineup very consistent.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that I've always harped on with other bands because they're constantly changing out members and stuff and then wondering why they never get a coherent sound together and never really go anywhere.
Right. Well, that's
because you guys swap out sounds at the drop of a hat.
Yeah. Like Emperor, the only member that they've changed has been their drummer, as far as I know. And maybe
that's because one of them was in jail for a while.
Yeah. Marduk, they kept the same lineup forever. They swapped drummers a few times, which kind of makes sense because you got to be able to keep up with what they're doing.
Yeah, and Jesus.
They switched singers, but they did that once, like halfway through their career.
Yeah, and that was also because vocals in a black metal band are extremely
the one singer Legion just could not keep up anymore.
Yeah, I mean,
and from what I heard too, that the live performances were getting worse and worse and worse.
Well, vocally, it's a very damaging style to play because you're just constantly in this croaking shriek that's basically just abusing the living shit out of your vocal cords.
Yeah.
Because they're on purpose doing basically everything you can do wrong.
In some ways, yeah. But as Razorfist has put it, when it comes to being a singer in a black metal band, you kind of need to know when to crank it up and when to reel it back in. And
yeah,
you don't go full tilt from the get-go.
Yeah, and if you do, you end up not being able to talk after like 5 years.
Yeah. You do some serious damage to your vocal cords.
Mm-hmm.
There's been a number
of where they can't repair it.
Yeah. There's been a number of bands in this, at least in the underground or tangentially involved in the underground where that's happened. Happened to the guy from Fear Factory.
Yep.
blew out his vocal cords. Happened to him.
It's another band we'll have to cover at some point because they're an interesting one.
I only like their first 2 albums.
Well, yeah, but I like their first 2 albums too, and there's even the later stuff has some interesting shit.
It's just funny how you'll actually hear me say that a lot. Like, only their first 2 albums, or their first 3 albums, or whatever.
Which, you know, there's a lot of bands where their first 3 albums are the only good things they've ever done.
Mm-hmm.
Linkin Park.
I have nothing to say on that.
But even for like the more normie bands, like
Linkin
Park, the first 2 albums are the only ones that are good. After that, they don't go downhill. And
Well, I mean,
other bands where their first 2, or they don't hit it for a couple of albums, like Judas Priest, where their first 2 are really not there.
Yeah, some bands it takes a while to evolve into what they're going to become, and some bands start off that way, and then they lose it. Another band I kind of got into for a while was this band from Norway called Imperitus.
Yep.
Their first 3 albums were fan-fucking-tastic. They had their own sound. They were doing some cool shit. And then they released their 4th record, and it sounded like Deicide.
Oh.
It's like, what
did it at least sound like good Deicide?
It was okay. It wasn't terrible, but it's... You had your own sound. Why are you going to sit there and start sounding like something else now?
Because they probably got some bad advice from their label or one of their fellow bands. We're like, oh, yeah, you got to play it like this if you want to succeed in this world. And it's just like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah, pretty much. I would imagine so.
I would say that, especially in the underground scenes of metal, if somebody's telling you to sound like someone else in order to succeed, that person is either A, lying, or B, an idiot.
Or C, both.
Or both. Or D, a record executive, which is both with a suit.
Yeah, that's just C with a suit.
Yeah. And you should never, ever listen to that person and just do what you were going to do the first time.
Mm-hmm.
Especially in some of these underground genres. Like, even in traditional heavy metal, it can be an absolute curse. But in black metal, it's a death sentence.
Yeah.
Like, because if you have one album that sounds sold out or whatever, the fans are gone and they're not coming back.
Well, that's the thing. That's the thing is, it's going to depend on who the fan is. It's going to be what the description of selling out is.
True.
Because you did have some black metal bands signed to some more quote unquote major labels.
Well, I mean, a lot of that is labels like Nuclear Blast buying up some of the smaller labels.
This is true too.
Like, because I think that's how these guys ended up on Nuclear Blast was they were on DSP, then they were on Candlelight, and then I think Candlelight got bought out by Nuclear Blast.
Yeah, probably. I kind of stopped following shit like that after a while, but it makes me want. Did this come out in Candlelight?
This, I think, is DSP.
No. Death Like Silence? No.
No?
Let's see. I think only their demo came out on DSP because even Into the Night Side was Candlelight.
Was it? Okay.
Dude, bring up the graphic he just had on for the first album. It says Candlelight right at the bottom.
Oh, shit. Yeah, you're right. I see that now. Let me put it up on stream. I can find where StreamYard is again. There we are. No,
actually, you are right. They went from Death Like Silence to Candlelight. They also licensed
both of them on there,
and they got licensed by Century Media.
Yep. Okay. And then they must have gotten that whole shebang must have gotten bought out by Nuclear.
No, Century Media is still around. I don't think they're releasing much by the way of like death and black metal anymore.
Fair.
I think they're still releasing metal, just not in genres I give a shit about.
Fair. Nuclear Blast basically is the European metal scene at this point. It's them and Napalm Records.
Yeah, and I never thought Napalm would be one of them.
No, they used to be a pretty underground one that was kind of unknown. And then I don't know who they signed, but they managed to get a ton of money in a very short period of time.
I mean, for a long time, they were the record label that put out Falkenbach, Albigor, and Summoning.
Yeah, and if I remember correctly, they're also behind Nightwish. So that might have been... That
could have been what set them over the top.
Yeah, I know they have Nightwish and Arch Enemy under their label. So that could have been what blew them up.
Yeah, and Sentinel, you're right. Spine Farm is another big one.
Yep.
but I don't think they're entirely a metal label.
Spine Farm? I'm not sure. I
Because
think they are.
because over the years they've also put out some shit that is, they'll put out like Impaled Nazarene and then turn around and release like the fucking rock and rollers. Not I'm sorry, the helicopters, I mean.
True.
So it's like, what the fuck?
Well, but at the same time, like if you're especially an underground label like Spine Farm is, like you need somebody to make you money.
True. And they're also Finnish and the Finns are weird.
Yeah, the Finns and simultaneously will come out with, all of the good black metal in the third wave. And then also come out with bands like Battle Beast.
Yeah.
Where it's much more poppy, much more power metal. But, they're both Finnish.
Yeah.
And they're both super popular in Finland too. It's not like one's part of one scene and they're both really big.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, okay.
Again, I'll reiterate it. The Finns are weird.
Yeah. Well, the Swedes are not any different.
No.
You have Swedish death metal, and you also have ABBA.
Yeah.
From the same nation at about the same times.
Yeah, that's true. It's funny how you went from the 80s in Sweden, you had Europe.
Yep.
To the beginning of the 90s, you get Marduk.
Yeah, that's an interesting jump.
So
that's one of those like,
not I won't
middle here.
Well, yeah, that's just it. And then in between that, you had all the Swedish death metal.
That's true. Yeah, you had
Entombed and Dismember and Grave.
Because those all came out in like 87, 88 to 1990.
Yeah. You had all that Swedish style black metal or death metal, which was freaking incredible.
Yeah, that was when that genre was really taking off. Like, I'm not the world's biggest death metal fan, and even I like some of this stuff.
Well, the Swedish style had its own sound.
Yeah.
It had that real crunchy, fuzzy guitar tone where they took a specific pedal and just cranked it.
Well, that's how we that's how we get a lot of those really interesting sounds out of equipment, is just crank it past what it should be capable of. And it's either going to work great and you'll get a really fun sound out of it, or it'll blow up.
Yeah. Well, the funny thing about the Swedish sound is,
or you'll get a good sound and then it'll blow up.
You have the Swedish sound from death metal, which oddly enough, a more modern band turned and went back to that sound is kind of like an homage to the old style, a band called Bloodbath.
Okay.
And that's actually like two guys, if I remember right, it's like the original lineup was two guys from Edge of Sanity and two guys from Opeth, including the singer of Opeth.
Opeth remembered that they used to be death metal?
Yes.
Cool.
And if you actually heard Bloodbath, you would think it's a band from like the late 80s, early 90s. It's got that same sound, same vocal style, same everything.
And I like how that's going in waves. Like, because when you look at it, look at where the trad metal scene is right now, where there's a ton of bands coming out looking like this. They came out of like 1984.
Mm-hmm.
Like just straight up, not hair metal, but like classic heavy metal.
Right.
And also a ton of speed metal bands.
Yeah. It's weird how everything's cyclical and how some bands will go away and come back. Like,
does that mean we're going to get another wave of first wave sounding black metal bands? Because if so, I'm in.
We've already had a few.
True. Yeah.
At the Gates is a weird one, Sentinel. I still kind of classify them as death metal.
Yeah. There's this weird no man's land between black and death metal where no one's really sure.
They were more involved in the death metal scene than anything else, really. But at the same time, they did have some involvement with the black metal scene.
Yeah, and musically, there's this middle ground where they're very similar, and it's just like, I'm not sure. And it could change depending on the song and how they play it.
I've always described At the Gates to people who have some sort of knowledge of the various scenes as death thrash or blackened death metal or even blackened thrash. Just because the vocal styles aren't your typical death metal. They're a little more thrashy, a little bit more black metal.
I can hear that.
the sound isn't exactly one style or the other.
Children of Bodom I would put as technical death metal.
Yeah.
And very high quality technical death metal.
And to put it simply for people who can't always distinguish the differentiations between the genres, a lot of it doesn't always come from the sound.
It comes from the lyrical content.
Lyrical content, yeah. Normally, black metal is going to be about one of three things. Well, four: nature, evil, Satan, or paganism.
Or a mixture of all four.
Or a mixture of all four, yes.
Caladan looking at you.
So, but at the same time, you do have other bands come out that don't talk about any of that stuff that would be considered black metal. Yeah. It's a weird conundrum of ideas that go into differentiating this stuff sometimes, and a lot of the times it comes down to who's doing the differentiation.
Yeah, and like there's a whole subgenre of black metal that's basically just Tolkien worship.
Yeah, just fantasy in general.
Fantasy in general, but there's entire bands like Numenor where it's just like, wait a minute,
Numenor,
this is black metal, and you guys are straight up just talking Lord of the Rings,
summoning.
Yeah, summoning.
There's another
off to an extent.
Not really.
Well, their name comes from it.
That's where their name comes from. Yeah, it's same with Isengard.
True. Yeah.
So there was a lot of you heard a lot of Tolkien worship in like the first wave of heavy metal, and a lot of other trad and power metal, a lot of other trad metal, but it's death metal seems to kind of, in thrash even kind of skipped over.
Well, I mean, let's face it. When Blind Guardian album named Nightfall in Middle Earth. Yeah, I got it right that time. I usually call it Twilight in Middle Earth for some fucking reason.
But then they turn around and then you have black metal and you have direct, absolute references to Tolkien, Gorgoroth, Isengard. Then you have Numenor. Bands doing Numenor, and you have bands doing nothing but Tolkien worship in their lyrics, Summoning, Numenor, and other, a couple other bands. But it's not just limited to Tolkien. I've heard one band reference a lot of like Howard's ideas from the Hyborian Age, a band called Balsagoth.
That doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, a band from the UK called Balsagoth. They're okay. They're not the greatest, but they were decent.
Yeah, and fitting in with the evil side of that, I've heard a couple of bands that reference Lovecraft extensively.
Morbid Angel being a key one. But then you also, on top of that, have bands that reference other fantasy works, like Caladan Brood.
Yep. Which, it's all interesting, and it's funny how like black metal has, in terms of lyrical content, is almost just evil power metal.
In some ways, yeah.
Because it's all fantasy themed and about.
Well, it depends. Again, depends on the band.
I wouldn't stuff like that.
I wouldn't necessarily consider Marduk, again, for an example, to fall into that category, even slightly.
Well, but most of Marduk's lyrics are about war.
That's the more recent stuff.
True, but when you put it in that context, they're just the evil Sabaton.
Yeah, I mean, then they also had a whole album talking about the historical Dracula.
True.
That's
one of their better ones too.
And even parts of the album before that, Heaven Shall Burn When We Are Gathered, I think one of the tracks is on both of those albums.
Okay.
I could be wrong on that, but I'm pretty sure they reused the track.
And then, if you guys want a really good Marduk album, just pick up Panzer Division. It's got everything they do well.
Yes. Panzer Division's incredibly good, and so
including the song name that we can't say on YouTube.
Well, there's a couple on that album.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Nowadays, there used to just be one. Now there's like three.
Well, no, they were both always on that album.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
There's one that you're absolutely referencing, and you're right that we can't say that. And then the other one may or may not get us in trouble, but why
risk it?
Yeah.
Just go look at the track listings on Panzer Division Marduk, and you'll know the one we're talking about, or all of the ones we're talking about.
Yeah.
And you should absolutely just listen to that album anyway, because it's fantastic. And
It is.
it's another example of people not understanding people talking about history and assuming that they're celebrating it.
Yes.
It's just, and if you're gonna try to cancel someone, a black metal band is about the worst idea I can imagine.
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, Antifa tried
Especially
going after.
Marduk.
Yeah, Antifa tried going after Marduk, and that did not end well.
Well, yeah, because look at Morgan. He's the size of all of them put together.
He's a large, large man.
He's like 6'8".
Yeah, he's bigger than me, and I'm a fucking gargantuan son of a bitch.
Yeah, it's like I think I'm 6'2". You're taller than me, and then
Yeah, and Morgan's taller than me, and I'm 6'6".
it's like I always thought that it was just like this stage presence or whatever, and then I actually saw them live, and he like looms over the crowd.
Yeah,
Like he's the kind of like person that I don't think he would need a stage.
no, and that's just it. A lot of these black metal bands that have stood the test of time either had something going on, either musically, and I don't mean just image wise, but like stage presence, like you said. Morgan has a hell of a stage presence because he's just a massive human being.
Yeah, like he doesn't need to do anything in particularly menacing in order to have that intimidation about him. He's just there.
Yeah.
And you're just like, oh god, they make humans that big?
Evidently. But yeah, if you guys are not really familiar with this band or these two albums, they have more than these two. I believe they have a total of 4.
Yeah.
But these first two are probably honestly their best work.
Yeah, and we had to cut it a little bit short because both of us have a couple of prior engagements we need to be.
Oh, I got to prep for the
but we wanted to cover this stuff because this is the core of Emperor.
And I got to prep for the oncoming Nor'eastern.
Yay!
Fun. Nothing like 2 feet of snow in fucking March.
Yes, Sentinel. That was Marduk, and yes, they're stupid.
No, I don't know if it was Berkeley. I could have sworn it was like
I know there was one in Berkeley that got shut down.
Oh, okay.
I
think there might have been one in
Arizona
too. I think there was also one in Arizona.
Yeah,
because I believe in the video Razor did talking about that whole incident, he was saying the band he was a part of at the time was going to open for Marduk, and then the show got shut down.
I think he was talking about another incident that was earlier in their career, and that got shut down because of some sort of terroristic threat.
Who knows? I mean, like I said,
it was the early 2000s. The government did.
Yeah. Well, the funny thing is, and I've said this to people, and they don't understand what I mean by this, is because I'm a black metal fan, I piss off both the right and the left.
Pretty much.
You know, the right hates me because they're like, "Oh, you're a Satanist. Thank you for noticing." But technically, you're wrong. I'm a pagan, so you know. But and then the left hates me. They're like, "Oh, you're some kind of fascist." No, not really.
Right. Well, I mean, in order for them to call you a fascist effectively, they would have to actually know what fascism is, which they apparently don't.
Yeah, well,
because you know there's a certain government out there that we may or may not live in that roughly fits that definition.
At this point, yeah,
more and more every day, sadly.
But unfortunately, we do have to cut this because I got to get doing what I got to get doing.
Yep, and I got to get ready for some stuff as well. So thank you for coming on again, man. And we will be doing more of the second wave black metal stuff because some of these guys are fucking awesome.
Oh yeah, we have a whole laundry list of black metal to cover.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
Immortal, Marduk,
all of the good stuff.
Abigor, all the good stuff.
Eventually, we'll probably get to Burzum as well.
Do we really want to give Varg the attention though?
That's very true. Maybe not Burzum. But yeah, man, thank you for being on here. I know you got a busy schedule, and where can people find you?
Well, I'm still doing stuff. I got some stuff I do plan on doing on the YouTube channel. I was going to re-upload a video today, but from my Twitch stream last week, but I waited too long on that because I'm a dumbass. But I got some stuff in the works. Yeah, I got some stuff in the works. I got a couple of guys I'm going to be doing some content with, myself and my buddy Nazmir. We had a good chat a couple of weeks ago. And we're going to do it again.
Yeah, Nazmir's a great dude.
Nazmir's a great dude. And the end of the month, my buddy I Can See Pixels has organized, and I'm going to be a part of this more than likely, a Call of Duty tournament. So, yes, March 31st, we're still deciding the time, but it's going to be on YouTube and on Twitch, and plenty of people streaming it. And I'll be putting out notices and the advert for it once I get my hands on it.
Excellent. So be sure to go check out all those guys. I mean, I know Pickles and
Well,
both. They're fucking
I can
great.
see Pixels. If you say Pickles, people are going to be like, "Who? What?"
Oh yeah, sure. I can see Pixels. We call him Pickles. Because
we call him Pickles. Yeah.
Mostly because it annoys him, but whatever.
Yeah. And then Nazmir, NASMR, he's got a channel on YouTube. He has a couple of really good videos talking about the Total War franchise.
Yes.
And he also streams on Twitch, plays a lot of Tarkov. A lot of Tarkov.
Oh my God, so much Tarkov.
Mm-hmm.
But that's how that game is with people. Like you either don't play it at all, or you just let it slowly consume your soul. And it's all you do. But as for me, you can always find me here for Rock and Roll Religion every Sunday, every Monday on 70s Rock Band's channel, usually with Imperitus for.
I will not be there this week.
Okay.
I have a work meeting because we have inventory this month.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah. Have fun with that.
Especially with the weather coming, I got a text today, like the meeting is happening and it's happening even earlier now.
Boo.
I was like, oh, that means they're going to want us to. Oh.
Yeah, that's one of those like, oh, that doesn't just mean meeting. But no, that you can catch me there for either It's Only Talk and Roll or Canon Film Club right now.
Yeah.
Depending on which one we want to do. And then every Saturday you can catch me on Vets Talking's channel for Skinamax Saturday. And every so often, usually once a week or so, me and him will get together and do a Vets Talking Tunes where he either gets me into some Tom McDonald or something like that, or I'll get him into something on our side of the house. Like yesterday, I released a video on getting him into Iced Earth with Declaration Day. Because we want to do like a lot more patriotic stuff because we're both vets and all that. So definitely go check that out. It was a lot of fun and we genuinely enjoy doing it. But as for that, you guys have been great as always. And take care. Stay safe. I love you all. And I'll catch you next time.